right, so one of the odd observations of Slab City was there was a whole bunch of different kind of people there. I mean, that was cool. I liked that. But I have a funny story. The first night I stayed there, I drove around a little bit. I couldn't quite get, what the order was, what you're supposed to do as far as establishing a campsite. I had read somewhere that other people asked around and were told, look, if there's nobody there, take it. But as you drive around, it's clear there are folks that have marked out plots or lots and put up signs that say taken or no trespassing, and there's nothing there. So it's not always quite clear what's going on. Could they just be a bunch of folks that are out of town, or did somebody put it in the dirt 6 years ago and nobody's bothered to challenge it? The first night I picked, it was like a crisscross of paths and roads and things in between a bunch of, in sort of a loose knit. It wasn't actually a campsite. They have campsites as well. And by campsite, I mean like in the Burning Man sense. It's like the clubs, or you subscribe to them, which is strange. But in any case, so I picked a spot where behind me, about, 1,000 feet maybe, was a Class A, an old Class A, which means you drive inside it. It's a big rectangular box, like a Winnebago, like you used to think of when you were a kid. In fact, it probably was from 70s or 80s. But in any case, they had a big tarp over it, and I know that those RVs, especially older Class A's and stuff, the way they're riveted and sealed and seamed, they leak over time. So the tarp was either to keep rain off, which makes perfect sense, or it was to reflect some additional light from the sun, which also makes sense. In any case, I couldn't tell if it was occupied or not. Because if you drive around Slab City, that's one thing that strikes you pretty quickly, and that's how many burned out hulks there are, or completely destroyed RVs, where you just wonder, was that like a meth lab explosion that just took it out? Or was it a Hellfire missile or something like that? Because they're just devastated. And it looks as if some just remain open and devastated, and some get scavenged for pieces, parts, materials. In any case, I wasn't sure if this one was lived in or not. I found out later that it was. When somebody came home, I don't know, it was probably about 10, somebody walked somebody home. The guy had a dog, walked the girl home. I couldn't tell if it was a girl or a guy or whatever. But about an hour later, and I saw some lights inside, some dim lights. So I assumed they had solar or something, battery, whatever. But then around 10 o'clock, I just hear, "You fucking bitch, I'm calling the cops on your ass." And I heard the door slam, and it was a woman's voice. Obviously it was a scuffle of some sort that occurred there, and something went down. Of course, I thought it was kind of funny that somebody would call the cops in Slab City. And I thought, man, what kind of shadiness is going on that a Slab City resident is threatening to call the cops? I mean, I really wish I could have seen what was going on in there. In any case, next day, I saw I saw two of the residents. It's actually a pretty girl with you could tell she hadn't bathed in a decade maybe. And a guy, just, tattooed, real thin, had a dog that looked like a dingo. Nice enough dude. Well, that's how I ran into him. So this is kind of funny. Second night, I'm trying to find a spot. And I thought, well, I'll go back to where I was. First night. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I'm too close to those people with the tarp. I'm going to change my angle and see. Maybe over here is a little bit better. So there was this huge mound of trash, just massive mound. Just, it looked like a bulldozer just pushed a mound of trash on top of itself. And I thought, all right, well, it's on the other side of that big kind of scrubby bush. I don't have to stare at it, and if I align my car right, I'm in a good spot because I'm kind of around folks generally, but nobody else is going to pick this area, you know. And I honestly thought that my first area, when I looked at it a second time, I thought I might be too close to some of these folks, you know, or maybe I was right in the middle of the road. It was tight. Like I said, it's difficult to see what because there's no plan. It's just total chaos. So I pulled up and got out, started setting things up, just kind of getting a feel for where I was. Dropped the gate on the bed, was starting to move things around, and I was hearing some voices, and at that point, the guy with the dingo walks by, who is apparently the guy that the woman was yelling at in the possibly abandoned RV the night before. And he was like, "Hey man, what's going on?" I was like, "Hey, not much. Just idle chit chat," as he walks by with a really good looking dog, looked just like a dingo, like a wild Australian, and which is apropos because this place is very Mad Max dystopian. They were either like Domo or that dingo dog, but they were all warrior dogs, the kind that fight and kill. So anyway, I saw him go back to his thing, and that's when I saw the pretty unbathed girl go in there as well, and I'm like, okay, so that's cool. But I was hearing just faint voices, and I was trying to figure out, you know how you're at the pool and you're in one corner and you can hear someone on the opposite far corner's conversation. You know, sometimes you can just lock on. I was hearing something, and I just was like, I couldn't tell whether it was, somebody's voice way up, coming through some dead empty space, or was it somebody's voice bouncing off an RV and coming back? And I was curious because I didn't want to be close enough to really hear people talking, having conversations. So I'm looking around, and I moved 10 feet this way, 10 feet this way, and I'm trying to triangulate, trying to figure out, what is it? Where's it coming from? And it hit me. There were people living in that mound of trash. They were under the trash. And I was like, holy shit. There's people in there, literally under a mountain of trash. And it wasn't like they stacked it together and then made it kind of like a hut or anything like that. It was literally a pile of trash. And then once I kind of focused in on it, then it became the pool conversation. I could kind of hear that there was people there. There was more than one person in there talking. It's like, that's messed up. So obviously I had to move, but that kind of gives you an idea.
In 1 mile, turn left onto Ivanpah Road.
All right, I'm gonna pick this up in just a second.